Well, hello, that's me again. Today is the April 7th. It is Friday, and as I already stated, things are developing pretty fast. It doesn't mean that everything will come to abrupt end tomorrow or next month, but it is developing extremely fast considering the scale of the human civilization. So in historical terms, we are talking about the really like instance, couple seconds really. And let's start with a simple thing, which I want to immediately dissolve, so to speak, any doubts when I say something about the humanities education. It's not that I'm trying to disparage it or look at it with contempt. It's absolutely not true. I knew many engineers and even, let me put it this way, academicians who were dumb as, I don't know, as an oak. And I knew number of people, and some of them are my friends, who have humanities education, but smart, inquisitive people and very, very good friends. So please don't misread when I say something about it. Again, you can have a jerk with the greatest STEM education, and you can have a decent human being with the humanities education with some degree in literature, something like that, you know. So, but we're talking about overall trend, things which manifest themselves over the broad spectrum of activities, and that is why when I was talking about this car smashing, you know, against the concrete wall, I meant it like in general. I meant it as like in the majority. And we are talking about the situation which I ad nauseam, I will continue to reiterate it, to repeat it until it is really ingrained in the minds of people who really want to know things. And I understand I sort of am present myself in some educational capacity here. I'm keenly aware of that. And when I say that those people, they suddenly, after the start of the special military operation, they recognize that, oh my God, we do not know that much. We do not understand how world really works, because it works not based on some kind of the abstract ideologies or whiteboard theories. It operates on the balance of power, in the foundation of which is real economy, which is, yeah, all those steel producing, machine producing plants, all those research and development institutes, and of course military, which is the pinnacle of the technologies. Everything advanced technologically is in the military. And this is just the cold hard fact of life. However, going back to Russia Today, and Russia Today loves to, I understand where Simonyan, Margarita Simonyan, chief editor, and comes from there. I'm not going to be discussing it here. It's inappropriate, but she loves to, or whatever, the RT, General Organization, loves to post here all those people with those politologists, those people with degrees in politics, and in sociology, like this dude, this guy, who is Mr. Timofeyev. And yesterday they published his yet another piece. Timofeyev is Valdai Club program director and one of Russia's leading foreign policy experts. I would challenge this assertion. I don't think so he's any good expert in anything, but he's certainly Valdai Club program director, and he is the guy who was absolutely well versed in the Euro-Atlantic cooperation, because he was part of this program. And again, he has degree in politics, whatever that means. I don't really even know what it means. Anybody who have a half brain can read up on politics, read history books, and be pretty much well versed in this. But he also has the degree in sociology. And here is one Timofeyev, 2 days ago, and he asks this question: can Russia really break away from the West? And here he begins to narrate, you know, all those well-known facts which you do not have any kind of expertise to understand, and you know them, anybody with the internet or desire to read books. You can easily establish the timeline, and he is talking about administrative level, and he's talking about that course of the Russia's reorientation to the east began to take shape as early as 1990, starting from the views of former foreign minister Evgeny Primakov. And here is the issue. What has to be understood when Mr. Timofeyev, who worked all his life in some kind of the so-called research, quote unquote, you do not really research anything there. You just read books and media, and talk to some people who also read books and media. That's about the level of the development, so to speak, for professionals, quote unquote, from in this field. But what has to be immediately pointed out, unlike Ivan Timofeyev, Evgeny Primakov was a professional intelligence guy. In fact, Evgeny Primakov at some point of time was a director of the SVR, of the Foreign Intelligence Service. So we already immediately have the disparity, and when Mr. Timofeyev talks about any administrative level and things of this nature, he needs to understand, and people who read this, when we're talking about something which is being tried to basically presented by some kind of Russian politologist, and we have to understand that unlike Sergei Lavrov, for example, or even Maria Zakharova, none of them, they have what identifies or defines a professional foreign policy professional from some kind of the media guy. Mr. Lavrov, he has the Form 1A clearance to the classified documents and classified information to such a level that he can come to, for example, Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, and say, hey, Sergei, what's the deal there with this and that? And Shoigu, because he was, both of them are also the members of the Russia Security Council, he will tell everything he needs to tell to Mr. Lavrov, and Mr. Lavrov is such a well-defined diplomat and specialist in the foreign relations. Yeah, he's leading foreign policy expert in Russia, that he knows what to say, he knows how to basically appropriate this information, and based on it, he makes his conclusions and he makes his statements. Neither Timofeyev nor the other guy, whatever he is, Fyodor Lukyanov, or those people, majority of those people who pretend that they know something, they ever had access to this. From not at all. They don't even know what it is. But Mr. Timofeyev obviously laments the fact that Russia breaks up with the West. And of course, doing so, he absolutely, and meaning the Mr. Primakov, Primakov saw, let's put it this way, a little bit further, to be polite, than Mr. Timofeyev ever will, with his reorientation to the East. He laments this because he talks about the West, and he forgets to mention, pardon me, that of course it wasn't Russia which was breaking, or who was breaking with the West. It was the other way around. The West rejected Russia, and as you understand, when you represent this, it is this way, then obviously picture changes. But that's just to demonstrate to you that when I bash, all those Western, so to speak, exceptionalists, here's another guy who evidently still believes in the West because he doesn't know the West, despite the fact that he worked in some whatever, and he lived somewhere in the West and studied. But obviously, he is not Westerner in the sense that he had to live and earn his living and know the West from the inside out. And look what he talks about that. Yeah, sure, we are kind of breaking up with the West, and he's talking about that Russia has unique schools of sinology, Arabic studies, Indology, and many other areas, and he's talking about that. Yeah, we sure have the schools which to deal with the Asian nations, and he. Unfortunately, though, these institutional advantages are extremely limited when it comes to meeting the task of a full-fledged turn to the East. You see, here's the 6th column working for you. And these are platitudes, of course, because he is absolutely not in the possession of any substantial knowledge of what modern foreign policy and geopolitics is. And he continues with the platitudes. For example, at the same time, we have to take into account the fact that the countries of the world, majority which are friendly to us, have their own national interests. They are unlikely to sacrifice them simply for the sake of friendship with Russia. No serious foreign policy expert will ever write it, because obviously I'm not going to go into the issue of the geopolitics as it represented by the realist school in the West. But basically, Mr. Timofeyev writes here a platitude which is really bordering on the stupid, because even when you look at a recent joint statement, actually, it's a statement by Mr. Putin after the meeting with Comrade Z in Moscow. I already showed this snippet so many times, I don't know how many times I have to show. Mr. Putin specifically stated that China and Russia, they conduct totally autonomous and independent foreign policy, for obvious reason that of course they are totally different countries with their own set of national interests. And it was demonstrated perfectly when essentially China's peace initiative, so to speak, has been declined. Well, Mr. Timofeyev evidently slept somewhere under some rock, not understanding that there is no sappy sentimental feelings on part of Russia. It is pure rigid pragmatism, because it is let's do business, and nobody tries to present oneself as a pardon me, friend or otherwise of anybody anywhere in the world. But again, he forgets this crucial part, that it was West which rejected Russia, not the other way around. And if he is the program director at Valdai, it beggars belief that he still doesn't recognize or doesn't remember what Mr. Putin was talking to the collection of youth from different countries, Russia, India, China, Africa, and everything, at the Valdai 2017, when he was basically reiterating the fact that, well, Russia in some sense basically is the ark to preserve everything best there was in Western civilization, and Russia is ark. But in the same time, this, pretty much alarmist, if not panic-stricken piece was developed from the, especially after Russia actually produced new concept of their foreign policy, where Russia is defined as self-sustained, totally autonomous civilization. But yet, he is beginning to continue this garbage which he writes here. Moreover, many use a modernizing process according to the Western model, preserving their cultural identity and, if possible, political sovereignty. Start laughing. If possible, political sovereignty. I don't know why this guy is in charge of anything. And he doesn't understand, evidently, that, well, Mr. Huntington, in 1995, he already raised this issue, if you can modernize without westernizing. And we are beginning to see things here today that in some sense you can. But let me finish with his phrase. But do not hesitate to use Western standards in the fields of economics, production, management, education, science, technology, etc. And here comes the question. Mr. Timofeyev has no clue what he's talking about in terms of technology. And here, for example, he doesn't even know the famous Lean model, which originated in Toyota, actually, in Japan. This Lean model was nothing but the iteration of the Soviet NOD, Научная организация труда, which was scientific organization of the labor, as one thing. He evidently has to have his updates in terms of the technological advancement, and let alone education in the West, which is catastrophe. And Mr. Timofeyev, being the product of this education, demonstrates this perfectly, why he is this machine, the car which is being smacked across the concrete wall, And you can look at this rack of the demagoguery, and you begin to understand that when people ask, what is this about the sixth column? There's nothing wrong with the sixth column. They pretend to be patriots, but in reality, I mean, being absolutely detached from the realities of the Western world, not understanding how it operates, especially when you talk about economics, especially when we know today that all practical economic indices used by the United States and Western Europe are complete fraud, from rating systems to financial information to GDP, what have you. And yet this guy says that, yeah, they use this system. Sure, that is why many of them still cannot get out of the misery and remain poor and underdeveloped. But what do I know? So especially when you look at the Western climate science. But this is just introduction to the otherwise important topic. And Mr. Timofeyev is just one of many. I just use him as a simple example out of many people who are absolutely unqualified to look at the modern world, because in order for you to look at the modern world, you have to have understanding of the balance of power. And you have to understand also how models are created, and they are not created on the whiteboard geopolitical delirium, which, for example, number of the American, so to speak, geopolitical thinkers, quote unquote, many of them were not really thinkers, starting from Fukuyama to Brzezinski to Kissinger to Huntington, were feeding the world for the last 30 years. Most of that what they presented never panned out. But let me kind of proceed to this, why it is so important and why people do not recognize. They don't have the toolkit to recognize what is happening, because for them it's just, it's a Chinese literature, and the original Chinese language. And here it is. Many intelligence people in United States and NATO, let's put it this way, intelligence people, they love this magazine. This is a magazine which is called Военная мысль, which is the military thought. You can see yourself, this is the March 2023 issue, and as you can see yourself, marked in yellow is the basically targeted audience for this magazine. The magazine is for generals, admirals, and officers of the armed forces of Russian Federation. Why it is important? Let me show you. Here we have Mr. Shoigu visiting Nizhny Novgorod, one of many Russian ammunition factories, couple days ago. As you can see yourself, he views how the process of the ammunition production happens, and then of course we see these wonderful little thingies which are called Fab 1500. These are monstrous bombs, and let me tell you, you don't want to be around even the kilometer away when that thing explodes, okay? And Russians use them to a devastating effect when necessary. And of course, this company, this manufacturing plant, produces all kinds of them, including smart and gliding Fab 500 munitions. So, and when you look at this, you say, why do I talk about военная мысль? Here it is. The reason I'm talking about военная мысль is because of this article which was last month. Look at this. As you can see yourself, while it is primarily Russian language, but abstracts and keywords are also given in the English language. And look at this. General Lieutenant Kovalyov and Colonel Sotnik and Lieutenant Colonel Sotnik, all of them PhDs and doctors in both technical and military sciences, they write this wonderful piece called Space as the New Domain of this Armed Struggle. And they developed basically from, as you can see yourself, and from abstract, the paper considers the role and place of aerospace systems in military affairs at modern and perspective stages of its development, prerequisites for deployment of combat systems in space, classification of outer space weapon, and definition of space as a theater of military operations. So it's a very interesting article. It gives a good toolkit, semantic toolkit, because, well, you have to have a good, appropriate semantics when speaking about anything. But look how it concludes. And again, it was months ago. What is highlighted in yellow is, I will translate it to you. So it becomes obvious that the deployment in space and on the ground of the combat space and anti-space system will become at the beginning of the yet another revolution in military affairs, because it will provide influence on the most different variety of the services, and will require a very tense military, scientific, and practical work in the interest of the reviewing of all existing strategic concepts and operational plans, which constitute the foundation of the combat application of the modern armed forces. Say, why this article is important? Well, the reason this article is important because of that. Yesterday, and the same magazine, well, actually not yesterday, it's today, pardon my. So actually, this latest version or issue, which is April issue of Военная мысль, I didn't get my hands on it yet, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we knew it was coming. Here it is. Look at this. RIA News reports, using military thought, that Russia will create new anti-satellite complex based on the MiG-31 and IL-76. And they provide the examples of the Russian complex of the anti-satellite warfare, which are creating on their mobile and transportable base. And they mentioned those things, the complex of the anti-space defense contact based on the heavy fighter interceptor MiG-31, obviously the combat laser system A-60, which is called Sokol Echelon, Falcon Echelon, on the IL-76, and obviously combat laser system Peresvet, which is fully deployed, and evidently we are looking at the new iteration of it. What are those systems? Here's the MiG-31, which you can see yourself. It carries underneath it a mock-up of the contact system, which is, it's a launch, the rocket or missile you launch at the high speed and the fairly high altitude, which then enters the outer space and shoots down satellites. This is, it's an old Soviet system, essentially. You know, all those roots of those systems are in Soviet times. Then, of course, if you look at the Sokol Echelon, this is IL-76, which have been used. One of them burned down, but then it was, it never damaged the actual laser itself. So it was recreated again on the base of another IL-76, and it's a megawatt laser, which is good enough to shoot down pretty much a lot of serious satellites. And of course, everybody knows what Peresvet is, because Peresvet is fully deployed nowadays around a number of the regiments of the strategic missile forces, and it's nobody knows still full spectrum of the application of this system. There are some speculations that it does work, the laser does work from the nuclear pump, so to speak. There is a mini nuclear reactor, and it can not just only blind just about anything, it can actually disable the MIRVs, which is multiple independent reentry vehicles, which will be targeting the position of the ground-based missile system of strategic missile systems of Russia. And of course, the laser Zadira is also used to a very good effect already in SMO, and it shoots down quite an industrial number of the Ukrainian and Western UAVs. And so Russia was always on the forefront of the development of the lasers and laser-based weapons, and we begin to see that, okay, they announced now that they will be created. That means that they probably already exist as prototypes, and they will be actually deployed very soon, and some of them, if not already. And we can only go, and speculate what those weapons are. One thing which we can say absolutely, confidently is, of course, the fact that they are there. And this time there was no necessity to create some kind of the posh presentation as Mr. Putin did in 2018 when he announced those weapons which stunned the world and which are now being used and are deployed completely on their combat duty. So probably we have the same situation with the new laser weapon systems, and those probably will be designed not only to shoot down or disable satellites, but some of them will be placed in the space. And if you read my first book, you will remember that I refer there to the 2017 or 16 CIA report on the development of the laser and space-based systems by Russia, and they are very advanced. And now I want to kind of finish it with a little bit of this news which go around, and they speak, everybody wants to discuss it, about this, so to speak, leak allegedly by Pentagon of the Pentagon documents, which was first announced by New York Times, I believe, and people begin to speculate what is this all about. They kind of leaked the documents about the supposed Ukrainian Armed Forces of Ukraine counteroffensive. Then Mr. Blinken yesterday against states about that, yeah, the counteroffensive is coming the coming weeks. And the question is, and what's the fossils all about? And this is what I have to constantly repeat to people. Leak or no leak, it means absolutely nothing. Unless, of course, we assume that it is kind of operation of influence and disinformation operation by Pentagon, CIA, what have you. But reality is, as Mr. Peskov stated today, which is like surprising how well, well he represented it when he stated that responding to Blinken's claims of coming counteroffensive, sure. He stated, Russian Defense Ministry has its own assets and relies on its own analysis of the situation. And this is what the thing which I, Larry, Douglas McGregor, and others were trying to constantly convey, that, guys, we are looking at the warfare of the 21st century. Yes, it is brutal, but this is not warfare of the U.S. Army or U.S. Marine Corps kicking ass of some undeveloped, underarmed, undertrained force somewhere in Afghanistan. No, this is a combined arms warfare of a really good scale, and Russia has a bunch of the ISR systems, or ISR complex, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, which allow Russian general staff and the staffs of their formations on the ground in the zone of the special military operation to have an extremely good situational and tactical and operational awareness. Russia has all means to do that. And just to demonstrate to you, just recently Russians launched 2 days or 3 days ago, I don't know, maybe a week, but just recently, another satellite they call BARS. It's an high resolution aerophoto satellite. It's what is known to it about it, but who knows what it is. And that is why when people say that, oh yeah, the counteroffensive is coming, sure, let it come. And that's pretty much Russians take this nonchalantly. And that is why many people begin to kind of, in the West, who didn't understand how the strategy, and I'm talking about national strategy coupled with the military strategy, which serves it, can operate such effectively, is, well, they begin to understand that Russian strategy is sit in this strategic defense, conduct when necessary advances and some offensive actions, but primarily it is about demilitarization and denazification. And pardon my French, this is all about killing the personnel and manpower of the enemy. And simple as that. Manpower and hardware. This is the only way you fight the war. And as Bakhmut demonstrated, now Avdiivka demonstrated that, yeah, guys, If you thought that there will be this NATO style, as they call it, I don't know even what NATO style is, some kind of maneuverable warfare in terms of what have been done in the Gulf War, I mean, pardon me, I mean, those are not serious wars, guys, really. It's here we have a completely different paradigm. And in conclusion, and in the view of this laser weapons, here's Macron with this von der Leyen in China. As you can see yourself, the Florian Philippot, the former French and European Parliament member of the party, French Party Patriots, and he is absolutely correctly states, look at this at Macron. He continues to be humiliated. At first there was 3-kilometer long table in Russia. Now we have a huge oval in China. And as I already stated, their issue with the Macron visit and von der Leyen visit to China is very simple. Chinese, they have their own interests, and but the main thing for them was to kind of somehow provide wedge between Russia and China, and many people still do not understand. China may be interested in France, I don't know. Russia is not so much. But they have to keep in mind, this is what Mr. Timofeyev lacks, for example, as lack very many people in Valdai, all those MGIMO, Moscow Institute of the Foreign Relations and other products of such, they don't understand that France is essentially an economic and military pipsqueak between Russia and China. And when von der Leyen and Macron were trying to push Mr. Z, Comrade Z, to do something about Ukraine, Mr. Z stated that he will call Zelensky when proper conditions arise, meaning basically go pound sand. Same goes when he responded to Macron about the, how to handle the situation in Europe, which is killing Europe. And I'm talking about in Ukraine. He stated to him today that, hey, if you have a peace plan, please present. If it's good, we will support it. So this is, diplomatically speaking, go screw yourself. So, and that's the pretty much result, apart from signing some already discussed and prepared business agreements between China and France and European Union in general. But we know the real situation which is ongoing now economically. That is why when people say westernizing, I'm sorry, not on the economic level. And this was my talk to you today, guys, and this is not even the small part covering at all. But I hope that it will help you and gives you some food for thought going into the weekend. And as always, my profound respect and my thanks to my wonderful supporters and patrons. And as always, guys, if you like what I do, please subscribe to my channel or support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee too. So have a nice weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.